All right, well, welcome to the Data Platform Summit and blogging for the tech professional. Hopefully, you're enjoying the summit and you're excited to see more sessions and you've learned some things. And hopefully, I'll do a good job here and give you a few other things that you can look at. So, with that, let's get started. The agenda is really blogging. So we want to talk about what we're going to do, why, how, give you some practical tips, give you some information and some ideas on what things might work for you and why this is a good idea, really for your career. So I'm focused more on your career here as opposed to anything else. My name is Steve Jones. I am an advocate for Redgate software, and I'm the founder and editor of SQL Server Central. So at Redgate, we build tools for database development. I've been at Redgate, probably close to 14 years now. I've known Redgate almost the entire life of the company. They were one of my customers, SQL Server Central, and they really support the community as well as try to sell software that helps you. Now, I founded SQL Server Central with a few partners, and I kind of became the main person there. And then when Redgate bought the site, they continued to support the site, and they continued to pay me to run it as a big part of my job. And I enjoy that because really it gets me the chance to learn more about SQL Server and Data Platform and to help you. Really, the goal there was to help you be a better data professional every day, and Redgate continues to support that now. I've had 29 years of experience with SQL Server in a variety of different roles throughout that time with different companies and industries. But really, part that really grew for me is being a writer and speaker. That was kind of towards the end of my time in the corporate world where I worked for other people. Then I started to work for myself, and now I work for Redgate, and really writing and speaking is a big part of my job. Microsoft has also honored me as a data platform MVP for the last 13 years. And my contact information is here at the bottom, so please feel free to get a hold of me. So let's move on. So what is a blog? What does this mean? Just in a little bit of history, this is actually short for weblog. Originally, we had these things called weblogs, and at some point somebody shortened it because if we do anything well, it's shortened abbreviations and words in the technical world and in the digital world. But essentially it was a weblog, and I started a weblog in 1999. I had moved to Colorado. I was starting to do some things, and one of the things I wanted to do was ensure my career moved forward, so I wanted to show off some basic web skills, and I built a static site. That evolved into a site where I actually did some blogging. In some sense, I built my own blogging software, and you can see an example of here from 2004 when I had my blog software kind of running, where I could post things in there and I could control it and I could talk about it. So really, it was kind of a career thing to me, though the blog part of it really was for my parents so they could just see what I was doing because I moved across the country. Now today, blogs exist in many formats. Certainly people say SQL Server Central is a blog. They're really we're a publishing site that does many things, but the line is somewhat blurry here. There still are plenty of people that use it for journaling or diaries or kind of a daily view of their world. And I think that's a super healthy, exciting thing to do as well, especially if you want to be introspective across time or you want your kids to know how your life is going or something else. It's great. I have friends that document experience, like some people do it because they're sick, some people do it because they're driving across country or they're doing an adventure, they're rebuilding a car, and so they document something in terms of their lives that's very important to them. Some people just share knowledge. Many of us learn things off the internet, whether that's something like SQL Server or some technical skill, or maybe it's something else like fixing a car. There's people that put blogs together and share that information. And kind of related, there's people that showcase a hobby. I know people that play in bands or take pictures or train animals or do something else, and they have a blog that talks about that part of their lives. Certainly people build businesses on blogs as well, but really today, that last one is about your career, creating a living CV or resume that talks about who you are and what you've done. So why would we bother doing this? What's important about doing this? Well, there are a number of benefits, and I kind of want to go through each one of these, but really we're trying to build towards working on a career. That's really what we want. Now, blogging about things and writing them down, I think has a lot of tangential benefits. When I have to explain something to somebody else, which is what I want to do in a blog, I'm trying to document some task, it forces me to learn something, and it really forces me to learn it better than I might otherwise learn it. I would say the same thing about speaking, doing what I'm doing here, but certainly writing that down forces me to learn. Now, I certainly could do a poor job of this, but if I get some feedback, if I ask people what they think, if I get comments and I learn better, and I make the effort to ensure that I'm presenting good information, then it's kind of forcing me to learn as I do more and more blogging across time. The other thing that I think is extremely important are communication skills. We need these, we need these at home with our family and friends. We need these at work with our colleagues, with both people above and below us, and we need it in the real world. We need to be able to communicate better. The one thing that I would say across, the entire time that I've lived on this earth and worked in companies and, coached kids and been in places outside of work in my life, so many people struggle to make clear, concise, accurate communications. It's just a difficult skill. I see plenty of smart people talk in circles or not really follow through in a logical sense, and they skip steps, or they don't know how to translate their thoughts into something that makes sense, whether that's written or spoken. Writing really improves that. And people seem to enjoy what I wrote. I've had some experience and success across the years, but when I look back early on, and I've talked to people over time, especially close friends or mentors, they always say that my writing and my communication has improved tremendously. And I think that's because I practice all the time. Now, I'm lucky I get to do this as a job, but even people I know that are part-time bloggers or they still have another job, as they do it more and more across time, their communication skills improve. Again, you have to get feedback. You have to work at actually being better at communicating and writing or communicating and speaking. But either one of those can improve tremendously yourself. The other thing I say is that when we're trying to write across time, it often takes some work to find topics and to research and understand them better. And so as I look for more topics, I can broaden my knowledge. And as I dig into things and try to learn them, I can get deeper knowledge. Now over here on this right-hand side, let me grab my pen. This is kind of what's called T-shaped knowledge. For a lot of people, we think of, I know a number of things like this across any width of a discipline or in my whole life, right? Like I play guitar, I can speak a little bit of other languages, I know SQL Server, I coach kids in sports. There's a wide variety of things, so there's a broadness here. And as I search for more things, I can make this broader because I need to add more topics on here as I go through, right? If I started with SQL Server, well, I have to learn Azure, so that adds. And now we've got XML and JSON, things to think about. And we've got, things like managed instance. So we've got, other networking skills I need to learn, Azure Active Directory. And so that broadens my knowledge across time. But as I research things, it creates some depth of knowledge. Now, I don't think many of us are T-shaped or too T-shaped. What I think for a lot of us is our knowledge is kind of this up and down area where some things we know well, some things we don't know well, some things we know super well, but there are also maybe things that we barely know, things like this. And so our knowledge is kind of this winding road of depth in different areas. And it's always changing, because the world changes, and as it broadens out, I know very little, but I expand that. As I spend more time in certain areas, become better and better in those areas as well. Most people I know, even if they're very general workers, they have some deep knowledge in some area. And even the people I think that are amazing experts in a certain area have a broad set of knowledge in other areas as well. May not be terribly deep, but they do have a broad set of knowledge with some amount of skill. And so over time, we're trying to both broaden our skills and deepen our skills. We're never going to know everything about everything, but we can know a lot of things about something. We can know a little bit about a lot of things. And so blogging is one of those areas that's helped me grow in different areas. The other thing is it kind of documents or chronicles my career across time, and it lets me know kind of where I've been working and where I'm interested. Now, certainly I have a blog where I post pictures and write about certain things for my mom and myself. That's different, right? That's a different part of my life. But in terms of my technical career, over here on this right side is actually my tag cloud, from my blog just recently. And so the size of each word is related to the amount of work that I've done on that particular item. So I can see what I've learned or what I've worked on or maybe what I just write about a lot. And that helps me to understand maybe what I like doing or what I've been doing. For example, if I said, what I really like doing is, working on auditing. Well, I do a lot less writing about auditing than I do about, say T-SQL or, software development in general here, right? Certainly less than Redgate, which has been a focus of my life. PowerShell, you could say I do a little more PowerShell than auditing as well. So that might make me think, well, maybe either I don't love auditing as much as I would like, or maybe I should be searching for auditing as something I do more of. And you can see the same thing by looking at relative things. I obviously talk a lot about DevOps. It's a passion of mine, so I think this makes perfect sense for me. I think SQL Saturday is incredible. I am a big promoter of blogging, and so I've got this SQL New Blogger tag that's really large here. And I'll actually show you a little bit about that later on in this talk. But having this sort of information, this is essentially a visualization of data analysis of my blog. And I think that's been important for me to understand across the years what I do and what I don't do and what I like. Now, often I talk about these type of topics in person, and I'll ask these two questions. I'll just survey the room. Can't really do that here. There's certainly, I'd be curious in the chat when we play this back if you want to answer here. Now, across many years, this is roughly what I've found. About 10% of the people have a technical blog. About 80% say they read blogs. And about 10% people wish I'd stop asking questions. But this alone should let you know that if you have a blog, you're going to stand out. And there's a chance that many people might come into contact with your blog, might learn something from it, might know who you are. There's all sorts of benefits from that. I think the number one benefit in your career that you can do is do more networking. And this shows you can do a little bit of passive networking by writing a blog. There's not a lot out there, but a lot of people read them. Now, in terms of the actual career benefits, when I was hiring people, when I worked at a company, often we get your CV or we get your resume and we have to look at it and review it, and we try to make some evaluation about who you are. And then what we do is we rank those resumes, or we pick out certain ones and we call those people, and maybe we do an interview with them, or maybe we bring them into the office. But we're looking at their resume against who they are and trying to decide, have they represented who they are, and are they a good fit for what we do? Thing is, what we found across decades and decades of hiring for creative type work is that resumes and CVs are poor representations of people, and we don't know them very well in a short interview. In an interview on a phone and maybe an interview in person, we only learn a limited amount from them. If I can get more information about you, it's helpful to me. And so when I can get a recommendation from somebody or a reference that somebody I trust or somebody I know, it helps me to better understand whether I want to interview you or hire you. And the same thing occurs with a blog. That interviewers can perform some due diligence on who you are, because I can see how you think, how you answer questions, how you interact in the world, how you explain things. And over time, if I look through a certain category or tag or set of posts, I can get an understanding of what you know, what you don't know, and maybe whether you're a good fit for me. So allowing that blog to come out there, as I said, with the survey, you stand out against others, and you have this chance to give more confidence to the HR person or the hiring manager or whoever is performing some due diligence trying to understand which people to call. If I have a 2-page CV and I have a 1-page CV but I have a blog with a lot of information, a lot of times I lean towards a blog, and that's what I hear from hiring managers all over the world. The other thing is that people tend to, I don't want to say lazy, but they tend to take a path of least resistance. And when you've got a blog that talks about certain topics, and you've got a CV that mentions certain things, that drives the interview. And so if I have a sample set of posts on my blog, right, what's the last few weeks, or maybe the last 2 pages of posts, or maybe for a particular job I have, what are all the ETL posts I have, or what are all the posts that deal with T-SQL. in some sense, I slightly control that interview because the person will tend to pick topics and things in those areas that are certainly important to them or the position, but they're parts of things that I've written about. So I have the ability to somewhat understand what things they'll be asking me about in the interview or what things they'll dig into. And over time, all of those posts, all the things that I write show some proof of my knowledge and skill. Certainly they have to be my posts. I can't just repost what other people have done or copy things. But it does give somebody some confidence that there's a weight behind my claims of knowing a certain skill. The other thing is you learn about yourself. Like I said, with the tag cloud and things, you learn about what you like to or what you end up doing, and that helps you to better tailor your career to fit your needs. So enough about what and why. Hopefully I've convinced you a little bit of some good things. Let's talk about actually getting into this and setting things up. So there are all sorts of platforms out there. Now, there are specific pieces of software built to do blogging, and there are some that are maybe pseudo blogging. So WordPress and Blogspot on here, movable type. These are really blog softwares of some sort. Tumblr, some people use it to blog. I don't think it's really a blogging thing. I think it was originally called a microblog, but it's more of a flow of things to me than a place I would put a technical blog. Medium is really a publishing platform. I can write longer pieces. I can have my own space on Medium, and some people use that to talk about their blog or to even use their blogging. But it's not really something I do that often. Ghost is a piece of software. Drupal is a piece of software. Jekyll are out there as well. The key is you need some sort of software that allows you to, in essence, post a title, have some sort of timestamp, and then provide some content with code, images, whatever things you need, and tie that together in some way. So it's your blog. These days, it's 2020. Really, WordPress seems to be the most popular platform. Most people I know have moved to it. As a matter of fact, SQL Server Central, we moved the entire site to WordPress, which for the articles and for the blogs works really well. For some of the other parts of the site, we need some plugins or add-ons, and it's less helpful for me as a data person, but it does work. And WordPress has a ton of plugins and things you can do with it. There's people that run entire businesses on it. For example, Brent Ozar, with all his training and stuff, he uses plugins on WordPress to do a lot of that. It's easy to get in and out of or to move to another host or another place if you want. It's up to you. WordPresscom is available. I'll show you that in a minute. That's where I actually host my blog. But there, any site will do. Any place where you can run web software and a database will work fine. Okay? There's plenty of hosts out there, different price points. You can set up a VM yourself and do it. It's up to you. By default, WordPress works with MySQL. It's what it's built to work on. But you can actually use SQL Server. Project NAMI has ported the queries in use by WordPress over to SQL Server, and they'll help you set that up. And that's actually what we use at SQL Server Central, so that we have SQL Server backing the site itself under Project NAMI. So let's look at building a blog and see what this is like. So I've got a couple of things to look at. For example, here is WordPresscom. Now I've connected to this as a private site, so that you can see it, because otherwise when I log in it goes to just my site. But you can see it gives you some examples of what you can do and how you can do it. It's absolutely incredible, the themes that are out there that make it look good, and all the add-ins that are out there, plugins they call them here, that allow you to do that. And it's really phenomenal what's out there. And so if you look at their examples and references and things, you can certainly see what's out there. There's lots of experience here to help you do this. And at WordPress.com, the commercial version, they're running WordPress and they're doing everything you need, so you don't have to mess with it. As you can see, they have a number of plans here. You can start with free. I start with personal. That's where I actually run my blog. So it's $48 US a year. There's premium, business, and other stuff. They all have more features and abilities. So, you get free domains, you can get support. The big things are themes, and then some of the plugins and additional monetary type items you might do, right? Integrating with payment sites or charging people or SEO or some of those other things. For example, I have very limited plugins and themes that I can do because I don't have this business or e-commerce site. But this is kind of one of those things you can look at and decide what works for you. The alternative, this is WordPress.org, is where you just get the software. Now this is free and open source software. If I click Get WordPress, I can just download it and get going, and I have all the resources. As I said, it's a PHP site that runs on MySQL or MariaDB, and then you need some sort of web server that goes as well. But the key is that, as you can see, this is built with WordPress, and it's got some fancy things that are available to it. If I get the WordPress software, I can really do anything I want. And as a matter of fact, I run the tsqltuesday.com site. I pull that up. That's running on WordPress as well. But this runs as an Azure web service. I think I say it here. It's actually Azure websites here, and then it's using the MySQL for Azure PaaS platform to actually run here. And you can see this looks substantially different than, for example, my blog. Not tremendously different because, I built them both. I'm not super creative. But you can see this one is very simple with a menu and certain things. This has a different menu. I have a picture at the top. I have some customization here on the sides that's available. And so it's up to you to decide how you want to do this. If I say get WordPress, you'll notice there's hosting here. So DreamHost is listed, WordPress.com. There's plenty of other ones that people use. Or you could just go to Azure and set up a site and do it yourself. It's completely up to you. Other alternatives, Troy Hunt, some of you may know, he had this post. He actually uses Ghost, and he actually uses the Ghost Pro hosting. And you can see mine's $4 a month. Self-hosting is probably in this range as opposed to WordPress.com. He's more expensive, but he's really running a business here, right? And so he's supporting the Ghost Foundation here. $20 a month. It's 4 cups of coffee in the U.S. It's up to you to decide if that's good or bad or anything else. But the same thing would apply for many platforms that you could do as well. Or you could go to Blogger, and this is the free version from Google. They bought Blogger or Blogspot, I forget which one it was called, and they made this site with software. And so I'm actually logged in here under my account, my personal account. I don't have a blog under this account, but over here I can just say I want to create one. So I can say DPS demo. I can just create this blog, and I could say DPS demo, and let's make it 2020. This one's available, so we'll save that. And it's going to create that, and that URL will exist. And so if we go to dps20demo.blogspot.com, there's nothing here, right? But I can fix that, right? I can say I want a new post, and we'll say this is the first post to start a blog, right? There's a title here that I'm going to deal with. I have all of the kind of writing tools I want, and said I want to blog on the MS data platform. Just to make this simple, I'll do that. I could add more things. For example, if I wanted a picture, I could upload a picture. So if I said, let me choose a file, and I've got my wife's horse was in the way the other day, I can put that in here. Here's where I decide the publishing, so I can pick a date and time if I want. The labels are where I categorize things. So maybe I just want to say this is a miscellaneous item that I'm going to do. I could add more of these, test, do those kinds of things. I can, talk about some different things that are going on in terms of the post itself, or I could just publish this thing. Now, certainly I could preview it, I could save it. Now you see I have a post here, and if I come in here, here's the first post. I want to start a blog. Okay, read more. And then what I would actually get here is this is a specific URL for this post. Okay? And it's typically a year, month, and then some sort of URL based on the title that I have. Okay? If I wanted to edit this, I could certainly do that. I could go to a draft or apply more labels or other things that I want to do. For me, a lot of times I might just do something like this. Can I get rid of that? Yeah. To show what I about SQL Server. All right, so I can update this, and that will actually update this post here. Okay, and I can have comments enabled. I can worry about the layout, right? The way that I've set certain things up. So I can add some gadgets and organize this. I don't want to go too deep into some of these things, but it's up to me to do this. I have themes I can pick up that might make my blog look better. For example, if I said, I like this, let's apply this. What does that look like? I see a post here. For most of these, I can preview it as well. I just want to show you this really exists, and if you want to go look at this, you can see this. And I have various settings that I might apply as well to my blog to make it better. Okay. If you go out to this URL, you should be able to find this blog when I'm showing you this. I'm going to stop right there and just say that's the basics of building the blog. That I might go through a number of items on this side and configure them in Blogger as appropriate to my situation or what I want to do. But most blog software will be similar. They'll have some options I can configure, some things I can't do, but lots of choices about what I want to do. But most of the time what I'm going to do is just be adding posts. And so if I add another post, just for the sake of having this out there and publish this, at the root of my post, you'll see a list of posts. And that's really where I have to decide what the theme is like, how this is organized, and what's going on. As you can see here at the bottom, it says powered by Blogger. That's listed there. Just like at the bottom of T-SQL Tuesday, I actually said this is hosted here, right? That's where the base website is. And then if you come down to the very bottom, it's powered by WordPress. And then I believe my site has the same thing. That says blog at WordPress.com. That's where I'm actually running. Okay. So that's kind of the basics of building a blog, getting set up. It's super simple and easy. You don't have to have a domain. You don't have to do a lot of work. You could, for example, I think here, I could add a domain, a custom domain. So I'd need to buy one or own one or something else. But it's up to me to do that. Here, even though I'm at WordPress.com, you'll notice this does show up at voiceofthedba.com, which is a domain I own. All right, that's the basics of building a blog. One other thing I think matters here is when I'm showing you building this blog and doing some of this stuff online, that isn't always how I want to work. Now I know some people do. They like working online all the time. It's great. I like to work offline. There's times I'm traveling, whether that's business or pleasure, or I'm in a place where I don't have connectivity. Maybe I'm, on vacation and I want to just write some blogs just to kind of unwind a little bit or something else. I like to be able to work offline. Certainly on airplanes and other places, it's good. So there are pieces of software that allow you to work offline. And I've listed some of them here. I tend to use Open Live Writer more out of habit than anything else. I've been using it since it was Windows Live Writer. It was open sourced, and there are some people trying to maintain it, though not very much. There are a few bugs, and actually I'll show you a bug when I start to use it. But it's worked well for me, and I've been able to post to Blogger and to WordPress in different places from my offline site. There are these other ones. I don't make any recommendations here. I'm just letting you know they exist. So if you want to use them, use them. So built a blog. This is where I find people always struggle. So let's talk a little bit about topics and how do I blog. One of the things people always tell me is I run out of topics or I don't know what to write about. So the things that I write about are these things, right? They're the things that I learn or I know or I solve or I do or I think. And those are the kind of the areas. And I don't worry about what anybody else has written or they've talked about in their blog. This is about me. This is a chronicle of my career. It's the thing I put on my CV or resume so that people know about me. Okay? The way that I often do this is I think about a problem I run into, or I solve something, or somebody asks me a question. That's the last one is typically what happens to me. But what I often do is make a note, and then I sketch kind of how, what, why, whatever I did, and then I go back later and I flesh it out and I build a post. Okay, and the idea often is I'm thinking about teaching myself something, or teaching somebody about this topic that doesn't know anything about this topic. They might know something else, but they don't know this topic. And I think understanding that focus and trying to aim really tightly on a thing is what is useful. So with that, let's do blogging. Let's do some. I'll actually share some blogs I'm doing. So this is Open Live Writer, and you can search for it and get it. Essentially, it's got a menu bar at the top with some things, categories these are pulled from my blog. So these are categories on my blog. So I'm going to say there's a blog there, right? I use tags here, and then I have a date. Okay. The thing I love about it is I can see what I've posted recently and what I'm doing. So for example, here's something I've been working on. I'm not going to save those. I've written this thing. Somebody asked me a question about JSON recently, and I was like, I should write about that. So I looked on my blog. I didn't really have anything about JSON, so I gave it a title, Basic JSON Queries. I'm going to put this under this hashtag because when this posts to Twitter or LinkedIn or other places, a hashtag will appear. But I've also tagged it. So I've tagged it as a blog, and I've given it 4 different tags that are going to go with it. All right, and these will then impact my tag cloud, and there'll be ways I can search them later. And I've set this up to go out 11/20, which is not a date I want to pick. I think that was the default date I saved it. This is actually the 24th right now. Let's push this out. I don't know where to push it out to, so let me actually pop over to my blog, and let's see what my schedule looks like. So you can see I've published stuff, and I have 2 scheduled this week. I'm going to push this to next week. So this is literally how I write posts. So I would go, let's go to the 30th, and I tend to publish in the morning. No particular reason, I just picked a random time there. And you can see here I've got some text at the top, right? And then I say this is what I was doing. Here's some basic querying. All right, I put this code in. I got to this point. There's some other examples in the image. So I need an image here. Now I was actually working on this recently. Here's what I was doing to kind of test this. Here's my thing. I'm going to take an image of this. Now I use GreenShot, but you could use any image capture software. GreenShot is free for Windows. And then what I'll do is I'll say I'm going to insert a picture from my computer. It's right here. And I know, and I'll do that. Show the paths to get to data in the document. Okay? And then really in a future blog post, in more detail how this works. So this is a basic post, right? And part of what I'm doing with SQL New Blogger is trying to provide good examples for people. So I write typically a post, and then I add this extra section at the bottom that says my thought process in writing this and how long it took, so that you can go, well, Steve took 20 minutes to do this, 10 minutes of playing with JSON, 10 writing this. Yeah, maybe it'd take me 40 minutes or 30 minutes to do this. But I want an example of what you can do. And so when I say I publish this, it'll actually push it out to my site in preview or in draft, or sorry, scheduled because it's future. And here's one of those bugs right now. There's a registration that's missing in this version of Open Live Writer that they haven't fixed as of the last time I uploaded this. But in any case, if I look at all my posts again, we'll see that basic JSON one is here. And so I could still edit it here if I needed to, if I wanted to change something and found a typo. And you can see that the WordPress editor is very different here. I can change tags or anything I want to do, but that's something that I do. And by having them all linked here, this actually goes out to Twitter, to a place. I keep these together. So that's one example of things I do. Here's another one. So I need a new post. So here's what I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to say, here's a new post. Okay? This is a blog post. And this is part of my coping series. So I've decided to build this series of posts ever since the pandemic hit. And so I put these out there, and I usually go about 6 a.m. or so. I go early. And this will be daily coping. So I do the Monday through Friday, and I put these out there. Now, in these posts, and here's the 26th one, I've got this beginning section, and this is it. This is on every one of these posts, this amount. So typically, once I publish it here, before I change to a new post, I would actually copy this and paste it to the new post that's already. Since I hadn't done that, I'm just going to grab it from the last post. And then I keep track of my series. So here's my series here, and I've got this, well, I've already done that, this list of topics that I'm doing. So you could certainly do this in Word like I have a list of topics for coping, but you could do it for any sort of thing in SQL Server or Azure or AWS, whatever you're doing. So here's my thing, broaden your perspective, okay? Now I hadn't read this or written this post yet, I don't think, did I? No. So I would write something here. So I got a new book, right? I actually remember now, I put this into a notebook. So let me grab that document and I'll pull it up. All right, so I opened up my document, and here's the text I had. I pasted this in. So typically I say, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm writing about. And then I actually have a URL here for this book. So I'm going to say this is a hyperlink, and I'm going to paste it in here. And then I've got this. Interesting, well, that's not spelled right. If I had some other text, I could put it in there. But now I'll just say publish. And this is really my process so that you can see what I'm doing here. And then I'm going to grab this. I'm going to say I need a new post. Put this in. I should have done this the other day, and I didn't when I was doing it. I happen to know that that was Friday. This is Monday. I'll set a couple things here so I know. Live syndicated, and put that on that day, and we'll go. It's 6 a.m. And then what I could do is paste in the rest of it, but typically I'll just save this with my error. And then I'll see it here in my list of drafts. And so you see I've got all of these items in draft. And so when I actually go back and say, what am I trying to post here, right? Or sorry, it's sometimes funny with Open Live Writer doesn't want to give up its modal status. Here's that 27th one. So I've got all my coping done this week if I look through it, and I'll have to add a post for next week, probably in the next few days. But that gets me going. All right, that's kind of a series type of thing that I do. And in this case, I've linked them all in this thread. So if I actually wanted to look at all of the coping tips I have, I can pick them here and see them all here, right, through this day. If I was on the home page and I wanted to look at just a particular one, I actually have the tags. Where are they at? Oh, the tags appearing. Oh no, they're here. They're right down here. So I could look at one of these tags. For example, if I say, what have I syndicated out? Here's all my syndicated ones. So I typically syndicate out technical posts and the coping posts out of there. If you look at the home, I actually have things like my editorials that I don't syndicate out there. For example, those are all silliness. Well, I don't have it. Here's my DPS post as well. But in any case, those are some topics. Other things I do things for work. So here's a post I started working on. You remember when I had that slide up where I said, make a note and then talk about what you're doing? Well, I had a client talking about they want to use SQL Compare to catch changes but no comments. So here's what I did. Sub2 database demonstrated how this works. Okay, what I might want to do is say compare code with no comments, add code with comment in 1 DB, change setting. And this is literally how I might just leave a note for myself. And then what I do is, because it's here, I've saved this, I can come back and pick this up later and say, do I want to work on this post today? And that's something else I'll talk about here in a moment. But I've got other things like doing a personal access token. Here's a note I made, said, let's think about how to do this one. Other ones I've got is I started to talk about pre-recording, and so these are different topics of interest to me, but I can go back and pick any of them up at any point in time and work with them. These are just in a folder on my machine, but they're actually, it's a folder in OneDrive, so it's shared across multiple machines. So for me, I have a desktop here and a laptop that I use, but I actually use a similar thing with when I worked at a company that had things shared across Dropbox. So on my work computer, I could see them, and I could also see them at home. So that's how I kind of build posts and get them ready to go and keep drafts of them ready. I try to pay attention because I know how they're going to appear later well, that's not what I want. I want this one. Here's how they'll appear later. And so what I often try to do then is I appropriately tag them, knowing they'll be together. I may link things together. So for example, let me go to the Git series I have. Here's Git. By the way, I could search here and just say Git. Need a list. Here's a number of items I've done. I had to do, I think this was it, where I started to do some Git posts, and I would just link them together so that I could, somebody could go back and just see them all. And this, of course, is a bad example because this isn't the right one. But just like I have any of these links here, like I have a link to SQL Source Control, I could have a link to another post. And for every post, I have a permalink that's here that tells me what this actual post link is. And so I could link those together so that they'll always work. I could also link them relatively at this point. And so if the domain ever changed, if I moved this, they would still work when I imported this somewhere else. Okay? The idea again here is that I'm trying to find things that are of interest to me. So in Git credentials, sometimes I had an issue here with Git credentials, and so I ended up sticking it here. Here's one, Jenkins and container. I think I had a second Jenkins post that I think I linked back to this one. So let me actually grab that and see if I'm correct. If not, we'll move on in this talk because I'm just posting it here. So Jenkins. Yeah, so there's database builds. Of course, I didn't link that one, which is a mistake. What does this one say? Yeah, previous post. So this one links. Okay, there. And so what I probably should be doing is at some point going back and editing these posts together. So I could actually do that really quickly here. And let's do that so you can see how I go fix things. So if I said Jenkins here in the search, right, what I'll see is there's things. Now Jenkins in the container was where I started. And then I would have something else. Sorry about that. My phone integrated online, and so now it pops up online. In any case, Jenkins in a container, and I have future posts here. So what I could do is if I came to this post, this Jenkins one, I could say there are 2 other posts in this series. Or maybe I should just say there's other posts in this series. And so what I'll do is I'll say the 2 posts are this one, and we'll stick it there. And really I don't want this to be an H2. What I want it to be is a paragraph, so we'll do that. And then I'll add the other one in here in this way. And again, I don't want that to be an H2. I want it to be a paragraph. And I think that's my theme, but let's just do this. Yeah. So I can copy this, right? If I update this, this will appear. But maybe more importantly, I can go to the second post and I could do the same thing in there. And so I said it in a previous post, it's there. Maybe this time I want to do it at the bottom of this one, and I'll say there are other posts, and here I'll actually add in this one is Jenkins in a container, so we'll put that in here. And again, fix the headings and update this. and then local database builds. So I had two previous posts here. So I might do something different here. So Jenkins in a container, adding SCA to Jenkins. Right, so here I've done something slightly differently. Jenkins in a container is here. I'm going to grab the link address and I'm going to paste that in here. And then for this one, I'm going to do something similar. I'm going to say the link is this one. Paste that in there. And I'll update those. And now if somebody were to find this post, they would know there's two previous posts in there. And if they were to find this post and they read it and they said, well, that's interesting, I did Jenkins, is there anything else? I've got some other ones down here at the bottom. And I could certainly clean these up so they look better, but that's kind of a way I do maintenance, and I keep things linked together as well when it's appropriate. It also means that as I'm working on a topic, and let me see if there's a good example here. Maybe what I want to do is I know that I'm setting up this project, okay, and I didn't set up the project. Okay, install software. Find a DB, link, commit. Okay, this might be the outline that I have. And then I go, really commit is a separate topic. Once I find that I'm outside of my area of topics, what I'll often do is say, I don't really want this here. So let's save this. And apologies for the error. Let's make a new post and say committing changes, and spell things right is always good, in SQL change automation projects. Okay. And then I'll save this as a second post that I know that I'll link to at some point in time. I don't have the URL and I'm drafting them here, but I can now see in my drafts I've got a couple items that are related. And so as soon as I think I'm changing topics, I literally just create another post, often with a sketch or a note or something else, and then I'll work on that later. So that's kind of the idea of how I blog, how you find topics, and how you get things done. Please ask me questions if you're unsure about how this might work. And with that, let's move on. So topics are one thing. The other thing is, how do I write the post? Now, I've shown you some quick examples of things that I do, but ultimately what we're trying to think of is essay. So most of us went through some sort of schooling between 12 and 18 that taught us how to write an essay about a topic. The idea really is, tell me what you're going to tell me what you taught me, or tell me what you told me. So I introduce something, I give an overview, I give details, and then I summarize. Typically, this has been a 5-paragraph style essay where there's an intro paragraphs, 3 paragraphs of details, and then an ending. These days it could be more, but in any section, any group, and anything I'm doing in blogging, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to explain what I want to do at the top, give details, and then just kind of summarize at the bottom. I find a lot of posts where I search for something and I find a post and I start reading it, and I realize they never really tell me what they're going to cover. They kind of assume I think of the title the same way they do, or I think of the scenario, and so sometimes I have to read through it to see if it actually fits my situation. If you follow this format, it really will help you look better on your blog. You will just look better to others, whether they are your friends or colleagues, or they're going to hire you or anything else. I do try to aim for 1 to 2 pages. I don't write long tomes of things. If you want to, that's fine. But really, I know that I'm writing this for my career. If somebody else is going to follow this because they want to interview me or hire me, they're not going to spend a ton of time here. If they're trying to learn about it, that's great, but I can break it up into a series and link things together as I showed you. So again, typically I will kind of write that topic sentence at the top that says this is what I'm going to do. And then I'll start to write the post. And if I feel like I'm getting outside of that topic or away from it, then I'll just make another post and I'll just finish this one and keep it focused. The number one thing I find that many writers struggle to do is focus on a topic. They try to write too much about everything else and not just focus on that thing. You do need good writing skills. Now, I don't say English, even though most people write in English and English is the most popular. Whatever your language of choice is, you need to understand spelling and grammar and do a good job. The same way that a teacher at 15 would correct you in your writing is what you need to do yourself now. So there's lots of good resources out there. For English, there's Chicago Manual Style, there's Grammarly, there's English.stackexchange.com. There's plenty of places that can help you. Be careful with the spell checkers, customize them and learn about certain things. For example, spell checkers sometimes don't catch things like bear and bear, so BEAR and BARE. Sorry, I was thinking of another word. There are certain words in English that we can interchange. Sometimes we make mistakes there and there, so THERE or THEIR. You need to understand how those work and learn to double check yourself, or send it to a friend, a partner, somebody that will give you feedback. My wife knows a lot about computers, but she's not a database person. However, I can give her a post and she can see if I'm writing correctly, if I've got misspellings, if I'm using words correctly, even if she doesn't completely understand the content. So building skills are important. There are some simple type of organizational things for writers. For example, I see a lot of times people will put heading 1 and heading 2 together, and they'll go, well, heading 1 is install, and heading 2 is download software, and next heading 2 is install it. A cardinal sin of writing, you won't see it in any books or anywhere else. You can never put 2 headings together, so you always have text there, and that text is where I introduce something. So if I'm going to do this big long install, let me describe at a high level what I'm going to do, and then I'll walk through the details in each section. Okay. Formatting is important, and it's hard for people to read sometimes if you don't format code or if you don't format appropriately, but don't go crazy. I see a lot of people that use a ton of bold and italics and underlines, and it's incredibly annoying to read. It wears on your eyes as well, so limit your use of that stuff very much. For your paragraphs, you should have kind of follow, really it's a 3 to 5 sentence paragraph format, right? Where I kind of say, this is a paragraph is about, here's some things about it, and then kind of here wraps up or transitions to the next paragraph. Don't write a ton of 1 sentence paragraphs. It's choppy and it's hard to read. Sometimes in the technical world, we're explaining something like I'm explaining a process in Azure. I may only have a sentence to write about a particular image or something I do, but I want to, try to avoid that as much as possible. A few other things, define all acronyms. So like RPO or availability group here, you'll see that I can define them in one of 2 ways. Only the first time. After this, the rest of the post would just use RPO or AG. It would not use the full term. Okay. For headlines, don't be cute or funny. Don't think that your cultural reference will resonate with everybody, especially if you're writing this for your career. If you're writing this as a business like Brent Ozar does, that's different. But if you're writing this for your career, as many of us technical people do to get noticed and hired in another job, pick boring titles, right? Something that's simple, right? Like this is how I do a copy-only backup. This is, that kind of thing works really well in Google, because when people look for those things or somebody's searching it, maybe they want an expert in how to use Azure Data Factory triggers. If you've got posts that use just that verbiage, then you come up. A couple other things I didn't put on here. Images and code, please talk about those first. Don't assume somebody sees the image or the code and they understand what you're doing. And by the way, when I'm reading posts, I don't want the comments in the code to try to explain what's going on. I come to your post because I'm assuming you're going to explain things. So make sure you kind of do that. My preference and what I've always learned is explain it first, then show. Don't show me an image and then later on try to explain what was in the image. Tell me something so that when I see the image, I look at it and I look at what you're talking about. Last thing, don't plagiarize things. Don't copy and paste from anywhere else. If you use resources, just link to them. I do that all the time on my blog. If you check it out, I link to other posts or I link to documentation. You may think it's cute to republish what somebody else has done, but what it really is it's intellectual property theft. It's a bad look, and it makes me think you're an untrustworthy person to hire. So rewrite things appropriately. Please don't just take a paragraph and try to change random words, because I can usually tell. Honestly, as an editor, I find that stuff all the time, and I think lots of technical people would see it as well. And don't, in general, copy paste more than a paragraph. So if I needed to do something, for example, in my JSON post, let's say this was a JSON post and I wanted something from the Microsoft documentation. Okay, I might come here and I have a link to BOL and I would say, let's see this, JSON query. So there is a JSON query function, and maybe I say that I want to say that this paragraph is appropriate. So what I would typically do is say from MS Docs, I would do this. This means that whatever, that's my part. This I would quote, and honestly for me a lot of times I would italicize it, but that's a stylistic thing. You don't have to do that. But the important thing is here, what I want to do, and I'm Control K in there to just bring up hyperlink, is put that link in there so that when somebody sees this, they kind of have, they understand that this is copied, this is a citation. Okay? So what I'm really trying to do is give credit and link somewhere else. All right? And that's just the way we write, and that's the way you should always write. All right. Scheduling and promotion. So the number one thing I always talk to people about, and this is, I hear this from hiring managers and other people as well, is that if they're performing due diligence on you and looking at your blog, they kind of want to see some consistency. They want to know that you've committed to this. If you write 4 posts and quit, take the blog off your CV. It doesn't look good. It makes me question what you're doing. There's just no good impression from that. So what I really want is some sort of consistency in how you write. Okay, so I don't want a lot of gaps. I think a post a month is good. I used to post every day. I've gone down to now, I really post 3 times a week, other than the coping tips. That's my aim. I may get 4 at times, but often what I do is I just push things out because I'm not writing news. I'm doing things in advance. For example, if I go back and, where's that JSON query? Let's come back to my list of posts here. If we look at the dates here, right, and I were to say my blog, so let's just do blogs. I do have editorials in there. So outside of the coping tips, here's the 24th. Here's the 23rd. The 24th was, I don't know why I did that there. The 20th, so that was last week. I did 2 there because something funny happened at work, so I just posted it. But in general, what I've tried to do is, outside of things like speaking at DPS, here's the 18th here, and then I have a few days off, okay, where I go through and I talk about some things. And so you can see if you go down, skipping the coping ones, there's usually a few coping ones between every post, because what I'm trying to do is pace myself. And for things like, if I look at all these, like this JSON one, I can push these out. And there are times where I might have 10 posts scheduled. So you can see I've got 4 here, but I'm not doing news. I'm talking about my career, things that I've done. So I just put them out there. Use some organization with tags and categories, okay? The way I always recommend you get started is write offline on a consistent basis. So my former partner, Andy Warren, used to say what he would do is Sunday mornings, he would go to a coffee shop and he would sit for 30 minutes or 60 minutes and he would write. And that was how he did his blog and kind of thought about life in his career. Okay, and so that was his time. I think that's a great way to do it. I kind of do it randomly as I have time because of the nature of my job. But for most people that are getting started, I always tell them, pick a time or 2 a week, no more than an hour, but really 15 minutes is fine. And just dedicate that time on your calendar. Make sure it's okay with your family and everything else, not going to interfere, and it's a time you can make most weeks. And just write offline. Write in Notepad, write in Word, write in LiveWriter, doesn't matter. Wait until you have 10 posts. Like you've got 10 posts that you've gotten some feedback on from your partner or a friend. You're happy with them, they look good. Then what I would do is look at my pace. How long did it take me to write 10 posts? And literally I would come into my editor and I would just say add new, and I would add 10 posts. Or maybe I have it in my blogger one here, where I would, I'd say, post 1. Let's do this. Post 1. And I would schedule that and I would say that's going to go out Monday. Okay, and that's got stuff in it. And when I say publish, it doesn't get published until that date and time. But then what I would do is I would say, post 2. Right? And then I would go say, well, I'm going to do that next Monday. If I thought I could generate a post a week. If it was a post every 10 days or every 2 weeks, I'd just do that. Right? And then I would see these posts out there scheduled over time. So scheduled on the 7th, scheduled on the 30th. These don't exist here. They haven't appeared yet, but they'll go out on those dates. And then I can, look at them and say, all right, that's appropriate. And that's a good pace for me to keep. Right? Once I schedule those 10, I do want to keep writing. So if I've got my time every week, I'm going to keep growing my blog. If I need a break, just say I need a break. For example, a lot of times, just as a good habit, because it's from the time when I was employed, I would put something in here. And I would say I'm taking a vacation, right? So I'm taking vacation. And some of these are editorials, but here I'm taking vacation. And so I kind of let them know I won't be publishing for a week or 2 weeks or something else. So I'm trying to have this represent me as it would represent me in person if I was talking to somebody. That's the scheduling side of things. After I schedule it right, I'm writing posts, I'm comfortable with all the things I've talked about. I want to promote this slightly. Not necessarily because it's going to make me $1 million, I'll be the next Brenno's or anything else, but I do want it slightly out there in case somebody's performing due diligence or they're thinking about hiring me or I need a job. So I do link to my social media accounts and push things out. I showed you an example of the hashtag and a title and linking things together, but I have all these things. And then on my CV, I have links to my blog. If it's appropriate, if I've worked on projects, like maybe I was doing something in containers, maybe what I would actually want to do is link to specific posts or a specific series. So as I wrote something in my CV or my resume that said, I've done a lot of container work, maybe I'd say I've worked with Jenkins and with Docker and something else, and I would link to specific posts there or specific tags. So I certainly could, do I have containers? Yes, I have a containers tag here that I could put on my resume or CV as well that said, here's where I do all my stuff about containers. Right? Mine is not terribly impressive, but if I went to somebody like DBA from the Cold, Andrew Prusky, I look at his blog, he's got a whole link over here with a summary of his container series on different areas and things. That's super impressive. If he's trying to get a job somewhere, that is really helpful. Okay? All those things. Oh, linking to posts. I should just show this real quick. So let me just look at that JSON post because we did this. This will actually go out, right? It'll publish on this date. It'll actually link to, and they've changed this editor, so I'm just trying to remember where. That's the date and time. I have this link to go to Twitter and to Facebook. I wonder if I can get back to the old editor and see it. Classic editor. I have this going to the SQL Server Central Facebook page, my Twitter account, and then it goes to LinkedIn. And so that means if I actually go to look at LinkedIn here, what we often find, see Brent posted this thing, which was probably automated as well from his blog. I get that similar thing for mine. So here's a post that I put out there that somebody actually had views on it and links and all this kinds of things. In my case, this is useful for my job, but it also means that people sometimes offer me jobs or they ask me if I'm interested in jobs because I have all this information available. In summary, right, I've a lot of information. I know I sometimes talk fast. I apologize, but this is recorded. I think blogging is a fantastic way to document and improve your career. As a matter of fact, recently I was listening to Brent Ozar and somebody asked him about certifications and he said, rather than get certifications, write a blog. Start learning the stuff that's in the certification or whatever, but document what you're doing. Showcase your skills, your abilities, what you learn, what you solve, what you think. Put it on there and link it to your CV. It really does It creates an impression of who you are, and it allows somebody to perform due diligence. Okay? This is, over time, a fantastic way for you to improve your career. It's not a quick fix. If you need a job next week, this doesn't help you. At least doesn't help you starting to blog now. If you've been blogging for a year, though, it's much easier. So I encourage you to start blogging now so that when you do need a job or you're ready for a change, you have this whole list of things that make you look good. Writing is one of the best ways to build your communication skills, which are incredibly important. And outside of networking, I think this is one of the best ways you can improve your brand. So hopefully you've enjoyed this and had a good time in this talk. Special thanks to Microsoft and all the other sponsors really for supporting Data Platform Geeks and SQL Server Geeks and the DPS Data Platform Summit. I was there a few years ago. I hope to go back to India, and I hope it's live next year or 2 years, but it's fantastic. I also want you to make sure that you can post a selfie, give us some feedback, do the evaluations, talk to sponsors and exhibitors. All those things help improve the conference, and they help to improve your experience in the future. Okay? You can follow on Twitter. My contact information is here, my blog, my LinkedIn, and my Twitter handle. So hopefully you've enjoyed this, and have a great conference at the Data Platform Summit.